What is the very latest that we know?
Since 2014, there's been unauthorized access of data from the Starwood reservation system, and that includes all the hotel brands you mentioned. Up to 500 million records is what they've said. 327 million people have potentially had loyalty account numbers, passports, and reservation history, right? So potentially, where you have stayed on every night you've been on the road, if you are a traveler who is loyal to Starwood hotels.
Now, Sumit, I've been trying to think of a hack that's bigger than this. This seems to be bigger than Target because hotels just have so much information on us. How significant is this? How does this rank?
It's almost unprecedented, Emily. There are a few hacks that have been bigger by volume, but those were generally limited to email address and password on a particular system. That's a big deal, but this depth of data, which really speaks to going from authentication to everything about your use of Starwood, is a little bit bigger than anything we've ever seen before.
So the CEO of Marriott, Arne Sorensen, said, "We fell short of what our guests deserve and what we expect of ourselves. We're doing everything we can to support our guests and using lesson learned to be better moving forward." What went wrong here? Because this has been going on for a very long time and nobody knew about it.
It's a great question. What did go wrong? I think what's happening is that large enterprises are becoming so severely targeted by incredibly sophisticated attackers that everything that we've done before is just starting to fall short. So I don't necessarily think that they are alone in having fallen prey to something like this. The severity, the breadth, the sophistication of these attackers in encrypting the data that they were taking out, it speaks to a level of sophistication that I just don't know how anybody can reasonably get ahead of. Now, the length of the attack, the fact that it dates back to 2014, is definitely surprising.
Now, that said, Patrick, you spoke to cybersecurity expert Brian Krebs, who said, look, there were hotel hacks disclosed at Trump hotels, the Intercontinental, Hyatt back in 2016. The fact that they didn't discover this until now means that nobody was looking.
It could mean that. I mean, it does. They have not yet said why it took them so long. They haven't really said why they were able to discover it now either. Marriott has been integrating the Starwood loyalty and the Starwood reservation system with the existing Marriott reservation system. That process started in August. I asked Marriott specifically, did this come up because you were combining these two systems? They said no, absolutely not. But what was going on for these 4 years that this remained unnoticed? It's not really clear. It's not clear that data was being accessed in sort of a continuous, in a continuous way. So, was this a vulnerability that was created 4 years ago and accessed periodically, and they happened to catch this one? Or, as of now, I don't think Marriott has told us everything we want to know about it.
Exactly, Sumit. That's actually the first thing you told me when you sat down today, is there's probably a lot more here. I think for a lot of customers, whenever you hear data was exposed, it's not necessarily your data was stolen and it was used in this way. So, what do you think was actually done with this stolen data, or could have been done with this stolen data?
Well, that's the biggest problem. We've never seen so much detailed information on individuals, including things like passport numbers, exposed before. So think about how difficult it is to even change your passport number. I think this is going to cause a raft of problems for consumers in whose names credit cards will be opened, lines of credit will be accessed. There are lots of ways that criminals can monetize this information, and I think that is really what the future holds.
Patrick, you made an interesting point in your story where when credit card information or credit cards are stolen, the companies are obligated to make the customers whole. But is it the same with a loyalty program? And of course, Starwood had one of the most popular loyalty programs in the world. If hackers could have come in and used their points in the Marriott system, will customers ever be reimbursed for that?
It's another question for Marriott. We're going to find out, I suppose, if this breach does lead to people's loyalty points or loyalty accounts being accessed. I mean, there's tremendous amounts of value in there. I mean, it's almost, I wish I had looked it up before I came on, but the monetary value of all of the points that are earned and sitting in customer accounts is pretty vast. I don't know that we know how that will play out. First of all, it's possible that this breach could lead to people's having, to people having points kind of stolen, but it's not. I don't know of firsthand, accounts of that actually happening, and I don't know that, I don't know how Marriott would handle it if it did happen. But yes, I mean, it's absolutely another dimension to this.
Sumit, you worked in the Obama administration. What do you imagine is going on behind the scenes right now in terms of this investigation?
Well, I think that you've already seen calls for, does there need to be more legislation? How do we need to do notifications and disclosures? So I think that the governments around the world are reeling. I mean, the GDPR regulations in Europe are swinging into action here. How do we incentivize companies to do a much better job of this is a big question that everybody is struggling with.
There's another issue here, which is that, this hotel chain has data on some of, very prominent people, where they traveled and when, and that information could have been taken as well.
Well, so that's what's even more frightening. There's economic motivation to sign up for something new in a customer's name. There's also a national intelligence angle to this. If you know where someone has stayed, if you know where a prominent person has stayed, there's a lot of value to that. It really reminds me a little bit of the Facebook and Cambridge Analytica scandal. You can learn a lot about a person, let alone a prominent person, based on where they have stayed over many, many years. Full reservation and transaction history is a frightening thing to lose control of.
Now, with these big breaches, the question always comes to mind. This is just what we know about. I mean, is this happening everywhere and we just don't know, or it hasn't been disclosed?
It's a little bit of the tip of the iceberg. It is happening everywhere. We know of over a dozen breaches in the last 12 months just in hotel. Our company tracks these things. So we're seeing more than one major breach a month on average. And unfortunately, even those only represent a fraction of what's actually going on behind the scenes. I think the reality is that technology and defensive measures aren't keeping up with the value of these systems. And so attackers are going after that value with incredible sophistication.
Have the breaches that you've discovered been disclosed?
All of the breaches that we've discovered have been disclosed either before or after we discovered them, for sure. Companies are getting much better about disclosing these things more quickly. I think we need to do better than that, though, and move to not being breached in the first place.